Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Grace Williams was 38 years old, and for over 15 years she had worked as a waitress in one of Chicago's most prestigious restaurants. At first glance, she seemed the embodiment of perfection, a woman always smiling, mastering every gesture with almost mechanical precision, meeting the expectations of even the most demanding customers with impeccable calm and politeness. But behind this mask of professionalism hid a life far from easy, filled with silent struggles and daily sacrifices. Grace's real struggle wasn't being fought in the bright, modern art-lined dining room where she served delicacies to the wealthy patrons. It was being fought in the small apartment she called home, a modest space with faded walls, where every inch told a story of resilience and unconditional love. Her daughter, Alea, was 8 years old. She was a sweet, curious child, full of an inner light that eclipsed her disability. She had been blind since she was 3. That day, a tragic car accident changed their lives forever. The little girl survived, but her eyes would never see the world again. The doctors were adamant. There was no hope of a cure, no technology, no treatment that could restore Alea's sight. For Grace, the verdict had been a crushing blow. The world seemed to be crumbling around her, but she hadn't had time to collapse herself. Her daughter needed her, more than ever. So she had chosen to put aside her own dreams, her personal hopes, and devote every ounce of energy to giving Alea the most normal life possible. The restaurant where she worked shone with an almost insolent radiance, a stark contrast to the modesty of their daily lives. Every day, Grace served customers dressed in tailored suits and designer dresses, men and women whose wealth seemed to give them every right. They arrived with their airs of superiority, exchanging sometimes derogatory words about the staff, often mistaking their kindness for weakness. But Grace, behind her smile, showed nothing. She played her role to perfection, because it was her way of protecting what was most precious to her. When she walked through the restaurant door at the end of her shift, she entered a completely different reality. A small apartment in a working-class neighborhood, where the walls bore the marks of time and the bills piled up faster than she could pay them. There, Alea waited for her, needing more than a loving mother. She needed a guide in a world that seemed designed for those who could see. Every evening, after an exhausting day at work, Grace cooked a simple, frugal meal, often made with the same basic ingredients. Then she sat beside Alea, opening the Braille books the little girl loved to touch. Patient and gentle, she taught her how to recognize shapes and letters, how to move around the house safely, and how to understand a world that made no effort to adapt to their reality. These were the only moments when Grace could truly be herself, without a mask, without artifice. But they were also the most painful, because she knew she would have liked to offer her daughter so much more. Expensive technological aids, specialized therapies, a safer and more stimulating environment. Yet she had neither the time nor the resources for it. And yet, every night, as the city fell asleep, Grace made a silent promise to her daughter. She would do everything in her power to build her a better future, even if it meant walking alone in the dark. One winter evening, as Chicago lay under a thick blanket of snow, flakes swirled in the icy air, coating the sidewalks and rooftops in pristine white. The city seemed to stand still, enveloped in a cottony silence interrupted only by the creak of footsteps from the occasional passerby. Inside the Michelin-starred restaurant, the atmosphere was quite different, warm, vibrant, bathed in the dim light of crystal chandeliers. Grace Williams was getting ready to take her break, her movements still precise and measured. The service had been intense, but she held firm, true to her reputation as an impeccable waitress. As she quietly moved away from the tables, the front door opened with a soft chime that caught her attention. A woman entered, wrapped in an elegant coat, a silk scarf carefully tied around her neck, her gaze piercing and seemingly scrutinizing every detail without ever allowing herself to be surprised. Eliza Carter. At 45, she was one of Chicago's most influential billionaires, a living legend in finance. Her name alone was enough to inspire respect and fear. Her reputation as a cold and distant icon often preceded her presence. She wasn't your average customer. Her life revolved around numbers, ruthless decisions, and power. But tonight, as she crossed the threshold of this temple of gastronomy, she found herself facing a reality she couldn't control. Grace greeted her with her usual professionalism, a polite smile and a calm tone, taking Eliza's order with the same attentiveness she gave to all customers. Yet, behind that calm smile, Eliza felt something inexplicable drawing her to this waitress, an almost imperceptible grace, a dignity that nothing seemed able to alter. As Grace moved between the tables, taking care of every detail, Eliza couldn't take her eyes off her. There was a gentleness and precision in her gestures that went beyond simple professional routine. She also noticed that, unlike some colleagues who took advantage of their break to slip away with a coffee or a cigarette, Grace never left without a certain urgency in her approach, as if every minute counted, as if she carried an invisible responsibility. When Grace's break finally arrived, Eliza felt an intense curiosity urging her to act. Without attracting attention, she left the room as well, slipping into the icy night. She followed Grace at a cautious distance through the snowy streets, to a modest old building, its slightly dilapidated facades, which contrasted cruelly with the opulence of the restaurant. Eliza stopped, hidden behind a wall. Through a dimly lit window, she saw Grace rush in, her face lined with fatigue but imbued with unwavering determination. Inside, little Alea was there, sitting at a table, her fingers gently running over the braille lines of a book. Her face reflected intense concentration, each tactile letter seeming to embed itself deeply within her. Grace knelt beside her, gently took her in her arms, and whispered comforting words. Her voice was low, soft, full of a tenderness that the cold outside world couldn't erase. She described to her daughter the characters in the book, the settings, the colors, things Alea would never be able to see, but that her mother tried to bring to life in her mind with the power of words. Eliza's heart sank. This scene of maternal love, of absolute devotion, awakened in her a long-forgotten emotion. Empathy crept into her like a warm breath in the icy wind. She understood that she had just glimpsed an essential truth. Beyond fortunes, titles, and appearances, there was a profound humanity here, an unconditional love that lit up even the darkest nights. Quietly, Eliza withdrew, leaving the little family behind. But this image, etched in her mind, followed her all night. She thought of the incredible strength of this woman she had just met, of her silent courage and her undiminished dignity. A promise was born within her, a secret desire to change something, to ensure that this light would never go out. The next morning, the winter light filtered gently through the restaurant's steamy windows. The cold outside contrasted with the cozy warmth of the dining room, where the staff were already busy preparing for the day. Grace, in her impeccable uniform, prepared the tables with the same meticulousness and calm as she did every time she sat down. Suddenly, the door opened, revealing an elegant, familiar figure. It was Eliza Carter, but this time, she wasn't just another customer. She walked confidently to a private table, a reserved space away from the hustle and bustle. The staff's murmuring intensified when management announced that Eliza wished to be served only by Grace Williams. As Grace approached, her heart beat faster. She had never imagined Eliza would come looking for her herself. Eliza's face was less closed than the day before, her gaze penetrating but gentle, filled with genuine curiosity. "Hello, Grace," she said, her voice clear, almost calm. "Thank you for coming. I'd like to talk." Confusion flashed across Grace's face, but she nodded, taking a seat across from Eliza. The waitress gently placed the menu down, but she knew food wasn't the topic of this conversation. "I was touched last night," Eliza began, "by the way you handle customers, of course, but especially by what I saw in you. A strength I don't often find." Grace looked down, embarrassed. She was just a waitress, a tired mother doing what she could. "Tell me a little about yourself," Eliza persisted. "About your family, your dreams, what drives you to get up every morning despite the challenges." Grace took a deep breath. It wasn't easy opening up to such a powerful woman, from such a different world. Yet, something within her gave her confidence. She spoke then of her daughter, Alea, her blindness, the expensive treatments, the sleepless nights, the dashed hopes. She also spoke of her own life. Between backbreaking work and dashed dreams, struggling to provide a better future for her daughter. Eliza listened to her with almost solemn attention. Then, looking directly at Grace, she asked her a question that silenced all the noise around them. Grace, have you ever thought about changing your life? Leaving this existence of constant struggle behind you to focus fully on Alea? The question unsettled Grace. She had often dreamed of such a change, but it seemed unattainable. I have no choice, madam, she replied softly. My role is to take care of her. But opportunities are rare for people like me. I do what I can, but sometimes I feel like the world doesn't leave room for us. Eliza moved a little closer, her eyes shining with new resolve. I want to help you, Grace. Not out of charity, but because I see a rare strength in you. I can offer you a real opportunity. Financial help for Alea, for her treatments, for her education, but also for you. If you wish, I can support you so that you can train, so that you can start a career as a consultant in the field of your choice. I want you to know that what you carry within you, this strength, this courage, deserves to be recognized and supported. Silence fell, heavy with questions, hopes, and uncertainties. Grace looked at Eliza, her eyes misty. Could it be? Something in Eliza's voice, in her eyes, told her that this time, it wasn't an illusion. I don't know what to say, Grace whispered. I never thought someone like you could believe in me. Offer me this. Eliza smiled at her, a sincere, almost maternal smile. This is just the beginning, Grace. But I promise I'll be there every step of the way. You're not alone. Let me give you this chance. In that suspended moment, a new door opened for Grace. A door she had never dared to push through, until today. At first, Grace refused outright. The very idea that Eliza, such a powerful, unattainable woman, could be interested in her, a mere waitress worn out by life, seemed unreal, almost insulting. How could she believe such an offer? It was too good to be true. Thank you, madam, she said gently but firmly, but I'm not sure it's for me. I don't want to depend on anyone's generosity, especially not a billionaire I barely know. But Eliza wasn't discouraged by this polite refusal. She knew the road to trust would be long, and she wasn't one to give up. Over the next few weeks, she returned to the restaurant regularly. She no longer came as a demanding customer, but as an attentive conversationalist, a discreet friend who asked questions about Grace, her daily life, her hopes and fears. Sometimes she sent her books or articles on special education, showing her that she sincerely believed in her potential. Little by little, Grace felt the wall of mistrust she had erected around herself crack. She began to see that this proposal wasn't a gesture of pity, but a real opportunity. A chance to change the trajectory of her life and Alea's. After several months of frank discussions, sometimes painful exchanges, Grace finally accepted Eliza's help. It was a huge step, a leap into the unknown, but the certainty of a better future for her daughter outweighed her doubts. With Eliza's financial support, she was able to provide Alea with the expensive medical treatment she needed, as well as specialized equipment that significantly improved her quality of life. For the first time, Grace felt a weight lifted from her shoulders. At the same time, with renewed courage, Grace undertook specialized training in the education of blind and visually impaired children. She learned to support, to teach, and to open doors that society seemed to want to close to these children. The beginnings were difficult. She had to juggle the responsibilities of motherhood, demanding studies, and memories of a harsh life. But every smile Alea made, every progress her students made, strengthened her determination. A few years later, Grace was no longer just a former waitress. She had become an iconic figure in Chicago, respected for her commitment and compassion. She ran an education and support center for children with disabilities, a warm and innovative place, born from her dream and Eliza's generosity. For Eliza, this experience profoundly transformed her worldview. For a long time, she had sought meaning in her life through the accumulation of wealth, power, and control. But thanks to her encounter with Grace, she understood that true wealth lay elsewhere, in the ability to create change, to build genuine human connections, to positively impact the lives of others. The two women remained close, united by mutual respect and sincere friendship. They benefited from each other. Grace drew on Eliza's wisdom and experience, while Eliza rediscovered, through Grace, a humanity and warmth she had long ignored. For Grace, Eliza's gesture was more than just material help. It was a rebirth, an outstretched hand that forever changed her daughter's destiny and her own. And for Eliza, it was the discovery of a new world, a new outlook on life, one that never left her. She never saw money or power the same way again. She had finally found what she was looking for, a deeper meaning rooted in altruism and love.